With us, we have Dave Birch, Stephen Winyard, Chief Sales Officer of Saltedge, Faheem Bakshi, VP of Payments of Kinguin, and Roman Pavlov, co-founder of Mint Venture XYZ. Stephen, earlier on, we were discussing potential topics and angles for a discussion that could take a week and probably not, after a week of discussion, not come out with any, how can I say, firm conclusion around a world that is shifting and is not yet defined. The economic case around the metaverse. Have you got any angle?
Oh, yes. Yeah, but before that, Dave, that was fantastic. Thank you. Are you for hire for birthdays?
You can't afford me, but
that's okay, yeah. Well, if I sent you an NFT, would that work? Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a fascinating topic. Good afternoon, everybody. You know, if you read in depth about the future of the metaverse and economics and payments, I've read articles that it's going to be generating $1 billion tomorrow to $1 trillion by the end of 10 years. It's got so much potential. If everything that Dave says ends up becoming right and the right companies and the right architecture are all behind it, the economics for a virtual world, you just imagine if every human being on the planet that's got access to the internet could create this gorgeous, beautiful, younger, slimmer version of themselves, which, trust me, I would also do. It's been a long time since I was slim and pretty. But if I had the ability to go and view things and try things on and buy things and create my own world as an individual, that'd be great. If I'm a business and I want to have the opportunity to sell my goods in a virtual world, it takes me back actually to a conference I went to years ago, a game developer conference in San Francisco in the days of Fishville, when the guy from Zynga, I think it was at the time, CEO came on stage and he was laughing so much because he just made something like $34,000 a second by selling virtual fresh air bubbles so people could make their fish grow quicker. Now that, to me, is the ridiculous insanity of the economies of scale that something like the metaverse could generate. And it comes to how brave can you be, how clever can you be with your thinking and strategy to be part of that, A, to enjoy it, and B, to make revenue from it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge conversation. I could go on for hours. I love it. I hope to get rich one day from it, but probably won't.
Well, it depends what type of tokenized asset you buy. Fine. You are involved in tokenizing, creating NFTs that are actually used in this type of environments. What are the user cases for these NFT being used? What are actually companies and consumer using them for?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Of course, where I'm coming from is actually gaming esports background. So obviously, it's something that we are trying to sell games, in-game items, virtual items as well. So it's more of a complex idea. I think when I heard about metaverse for the first time, it was something for me very common. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with GTA, San Andreas. If not, I think next year is GTA 6, so I'm super excited about it. I think a lot of fans probably know it. So GTA, actually, they started in-game currency. They started the concept of a virtual city where you have people around you, you have cars, you have buildings, you have missions, and then you can buy some kind of different in-game currency, virtual items. So for me, the metaverse concept was already generated from that idea. Obviously, I think the digital content, the digital identity is something that has to be also made. And I think that in GTA 6, which is maybe upcoming games from now on in the future, would be based in metaverse. And NFTs, which is something for me, 1 year ago, they were, I think, overpriced, and now we know the pricing of that. We started with NFT Marketplace, and I think that was a bad idea, a bad investment, where we were expecting a lot of users, especially gamers, to buy these games. Unfortunately, these games are, in sort of NFTs, like for example, which was also mentioned in the previous presentation about, the monkey ones, or OpenSea, which is also selling NFTs, something like really rare for us to convert a fan art. So I'm not sure how many of you are aware of CS:GO. So Counter-Strike, there's skins game. So of course there are weapons. And I think even 10 years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, once one of the most expensive skins were for $50,000. So users were already buying those skins. Obviously, I think NFT, I don't know where it will be used apart from maybe redemption at the moment. But I think the idea of NFT, idea of skins, in-game items, they've already started, I think 10 years ago. And right now, I think we are in a wave of the blockchaining it somehow. And I think the future is quite bright in terms of the revenue.
Thank you.
I can add to that.
Yes, please,
great point you made. Where is the utility of NFTs coming from the Web3 venture studio background, where we possess range of tech and growth hack the industry with our tech. So we're building, for example, loyalty programs for those fashion brands, and then making those skins that could be shared with a hyperlink on Instagram, and then immediately from there led back to the other website. So that's the simple utility of centralization of the community, and then of increase of revenue and conversion rate, all the stuff. So we're doing it right now. Of course, there are lots of other utilities out there, like e-commerce. I feel is like one of the biggest field right now for the digital assets. Especially with new protocols coming into play, like Boson protocol. I recommend you to check that. They just made a partnership with World Economic Forum. So new disruptors will provide new SDKs and APIs for utilities, and we'll see, I think in the next 2 years, digital fashion and entertainment would be the ones, in my opinion, that would really go forward with that.
Okay, so 2 years is a very short time horizon. Dave, what do you think? Is it going to be 2 years, 20, 200?
I think it's going to be different in different sectors. So I think and I'll give you an example. I went to a virtual book launch a couple of weeks ago in a virtual world, and which was sort of fun. It was interesting, chatting to different people and moving around and whatever. And but if you wanted to buy the book, and how did you actually buy the book in the metaverse? And they came up with 2 ways of doing this. So one of them was on one of the walls in the metaverse, there was a QR code. And so if you looked at it with your 2D browser, you could take a picture of it with your phone, and that would take you to a website where you could use your card details and buy a copy of the book. And the other way of doing it was some of the objects in the virtual world had hyperlinks attached to them. So if you touched the object in the virtual world, your 2D browser would go to a website that had that hyperlink. And again, you could type in your card details and whatever. Party like it's 1999. But both of those are not very good experiences. They're not coming out of the virtual world in order to do a transaction. Doesn't really work. That's not what you want. Is inside the virtual world, you want to take the book and hand over dollars or gold or whatever it is you're dealing with, and in the virtual world. And the underlying reality of that is it's a Web3 transaction that moves tokens between wallets. So now I have the token for the book, and so when my Kindle tries to read the book, it'll check to see if I've got the token, and if I have, I can read the book. You need it to be that seamless inside the virtual world. And the reason we don't have that at the moment, we have the Web3 technology, we have the tokenization technology. The bit that's missing is the digital identity technology. And as we gradually get to solve that problem, then I think the commerce will become more integrated with the virtual worlds.
Yeah, which Dave mentioned is called token-gated commerce, just for our audience. Yeah.
We'll look it up afterwards. Also, just the other thing to mention, in things like Grand Theft, I mean, you're right, those are interesting examples. But when you buy a skin in Grand Theft Auto, no, you didn't say
Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike. When you buy a skin in Counter-Strike, you're not really buying it. Like, it doesn't belong to you. It still belongs to the people that make Counter-Strike. And they could make 1 million of those skins tomorrow and yours is worthless, or they could delete it. It's like you're not really buying it. The point about the metaverse is when you buy something in the metaverse, you really buy it. You now have the NFT, you now have the token. And so, you know what I mean? Like, that's really very different, I think, and exciting to your point. That is an exciting new area of commerce,
It is indeed exciting. Now, if we look at
Don't sound so excited.
And the reports that are available, there's different angles. The schemes have their own views on the payment type and the instruments that are going to hold the payment credentials. And you got fintechs and innovators coming up with different angles. Question for Faheem. So you actually are closer to one of the user cases with gaming.
Right.
What are the payment instruments that are actually used within these gaming communities? How are they transferring values? Like, what is the opt-in, opt-out point of convergence? Because ultimately, something has to start with dollars or euros at one point, and maybe end up as a euro dollars or a loss of €1 billion on whatever on the other. And so...
Yeah, well... Of course, when we want to sell NFT, the biggest problem is that users want to buy in fiat currencies. But the fiat currency has an issue that a lot of payment processors, acquirer, they're still against this NFT. I'm not sure as of today, but I know that a few months ago we wanted to have credit cards. Of course, digital wallet, for fiat currency user can go to the checkout. Obviously, the whole platform is based on blockchain, and the users are going to the checkout option, and then they cannot see their preferred payment method. Obviously, we request, I think it's very interesting to understand that users want to buy NFT with the fiat currency. So that's another thing which we have to see from the users' approach, that the users want to buy NFT, they should use cryptocurrency, maybe USDT or some utility token which is actually having a dollar value pricing. But at the moment with the NFTs, it's only cryptocurrencies. It's maybe Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin. I hope one day we can actually convert it into like fiat currency into tokenomics, because at the moment it's very difficult for us to convert fiat to wallet to crypto, and crypto to buy the NFTs. So that's another challenge we have. We have a drop in user conversion, and yeah, we're looking forward that whenever we want to sell something, even in Metaverse, we can easily convert fiat to crypto. Because probably fiat will not, maybe this CBDC would definitely help us out. But at the moment, it's still something which needs to be improved quite well.
Thank you. So Dave, you were a bit too futuristic in your perspective of having no settlement and clearing. In reality, we are in a world that is even more complicated than having a settlement and clearing.
No, I agree. I agree with this point here. So asking how we can shoehorn credit cards into the metaverse is pointless. I mean, that's not the way we should be thinking. Your users want to transact using tokens. They want to use tokenized currencies of one form or another. You said USDT, maybe, but stable coins and central bank digital currency in the future. So the commerce is not going to be people trying to use credit cards and things. It's going to be people using tokens. They might get those tokens with credit cards, but that's got nothing to do with the metaverse. That's outside the metaverse. So.
That is a point of entry and a point of exit.
So I agree with this vision here. This idea that the economic avatars, people, companies, whatever in the metaverse, will exchange using protocols, to me makes much more logical sense. It's internally consistent, and so and also you have to remember. It's a lot cheaper. I mean, the reason why people are interested in it, you're interested in it because you're young and you think it's going to be exciting and all this sort of thing. Most of the people here, a little bit older like me, we're interested in it because it's cheaper. That's what it boils down to. Like, what does it cost to exchange an NFT for an Ed Sheeran ticket to a fungible token for 10 English pounds or whatever? Nothing. I mean, effectively nothing. So it's not to do with like some kind of smash the state, we don't need no stinking badges, decentralized, whatever. The people in this room are interested in it because it's cheaper. That's what it boils down to.
But people in this room are coming from an industry
When I say they're interested, that's conference rhetoric. I mean, I can see their faces. I mean,
So a typical argument for people, professionals from the card payment industry is the fact that cards exist because they have an element of security, payment guarantees, the ability to dispute transactions, and so on. Are these very cheap transactions going to be fit for purpose, provide the amount of security needed for mass upscale adoption?
The other way around. Cards are a 1950s hack to get around the fact we weren't in the metaverse. In the metaverse, you have tokens, you have digital identity. You don't need cards and the sedimentary layers of fossilized technology that sit underneath them. You don't need, it's the other way round. If you live in a world where everything's connected, where you have digital identity, where you have tokens that you can't forge and counterfeit and all that sort of thing, you don't need all of that old 1950s stuff. You know, so the question to ask isn't how can we, it's the other way round. Like, we don't need that stuff.
Okay. I just realized I'm completely obsolete, and majority of the work we do is
No, we'll still need consultants.
completely obsolete.
That's my message of hope. Is
Stephen,
I'm exaggerating.
in this type of environment, are we heading to a reality where value is going to be completely tokenized, no current accounts anymore? What is your view? Like,
well, I think there'll still be a blend of both. You'll still need to have some house somewhere with a bank to store money. What Dave's on about, which I totally support, is that entire ecosystem of a metaverse will rely on the exchange of a digitized token from point to point. And in fact, just to add some extra spread on this, where it also now starts to become very clever is if you can imagine you've got, let's say, the book that Dave was on about that he bought. Now, whilst he may be sending a $20 equivalent digital token from point to acquire that book, in reality, if those tokens are all put on a smart contract for a blockchain, and there are many beneficiaries, the publisher, the writer, the author, the ghostwriter, I don't know, there could be 10 people, all of whom need a divvy or a vig of that share. It is automatically created and split into their wallet. Guess what? No card networks, no banks. So you've got no fees on doing proper, really smart, intelligent commerce. So I think that there's going to be this sort of blend quite naturally, because once you've got the on-ramp for somebody to want to buy the stable coins or whatever the crypto is, which you might use open banking for or cards if it lets them, you're then in a different world where it's super safe to be able to do exactly what Dave and my colleague was referring to. But then you need to, in some cases, take that out and put it in an off-ramp to turn it into cash, maybe buy a car from a local dealer because he doesn't take crypto. So there's an awful lot of very clever, very sexy, very cost-effective ways for this to work, and I totally support the fact that, you know, we are relying still on a card network and the banks because it's kind of old school. We are now talking about the next level of financial technology.
thank you. One of the questions that we got from the audience is about the role of payment network in the metaverse. So from what I'm hearing, there is practically none. Dave, is that correct?
Well, that sort of depends whether they're in the room or not, doesn't it? Because, look, but you're just, I don't think it means that. What it means is they get unbundled a little bit. Because at the moment, and as we grew up understanding, the payment networks provide a bundle of things. They provide the merchant guarantee and the payment and the chargeback. They provide that bundle. But in the metaverse, I think those things become unbundled. Mm-hmm. You know, so if I'm I can't think of an example now, but if I'm buying something from Tesco, you know, I can't imagine what in the metaverse, but let's imagine I'm buying something from Tesco in the metaverse or Carrefour or something. Like, I don't need the payment. I don't need chargeback. Like, if there's something wrong, I'll go and complain to Tesco. I don't need the card network to do that for me. There are other things that I'll want to buy where I'll still want some other extra protections, but I'll buy those as separate insurances. You know, they might be bundled in the transaction. So I don't think they'll go away, but I think they'll be unbundled because a lot of the things they do don't really have a point in the metaverse, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I would like to add regarding this, you know, there are customers who are trying to go to metaverse, let's say customers, users, I don't know how do you call it, meta users, I'm not sure what's the term called. So these users are differently than the traditional payment because that's what metaverse is about. You know, it's more about tokens where the security is so strong that even if you want to pay it, it's compulsory that it's you paid. It's not someone else has paid. It's not, you're not using someone else's wallet like you're using someone else's card. You know, I think I see a question about the fraud. I think there won't be any fraud. Maybe there will be some different level of fraud, which I don't know of at the moment. But as of today, it's very difficult to also pass the fraud, pass the fraud from one wallet to another. So I can't steal, for example, your wallet in the metaverse and try to pay for it because probably the authorization is quite high. And especially even if you want to pay with Bitcoins in a traditional platform, to buy any kind of product, there is no refunds because you've just paid, it's gone, and it's already in the blockchain. So I think metaverse is also more dynamic as well as very transparent. Yeah.
Right, just to add also, there is no chargebacks currently of the NFTs within the game, so the risk is diminished. And also, of course, within the wallet to manage digital assets, now we're using biometrics, for example, so not to steal your identity, as you say. And of course, we're using also cross-chain different solutions, multi-signature wallets, to optimize the whole experience. So from the tech side, I feel the security has been already addressed, and we're building it. And payment networks per se, indeed, as Steven said, there's on-ramps, off-ramps. So as soon as we sort it, get licensed, and taking care on the fiat, on-ramping, off-ramping side, within the digital asset management, within the metaverse, now there are lots of startups, especially after COVID, popping up and protocols. So I think we're well on a path.
Okay, that's good to hear. One of the questions that we got here is, with this amount of commerce potential, fraudster will be paying attention. So fraud is sorted, the fraud challenge is already sorted, something that we don't need to worry about anymore, or is there still an element of exposure and risk?
It's different. In that space right now, the amount of fraud is absolutely colossal. It's not the sort of fraud we deal with. It's the fraud of persuading people to buy Jack Dorsey's tweet for $2.8 million. So it's not the kind of fraud that we're dealing with. It's a different kind of fraud.
It's a value fraud.
But the answer is, I think it is very different. And the reason for that is that the internet, you often hear people say this kind of thing. The internet was built without a security layer. That's the whole point of how the internet was built, was that everyone could just connect to everybody. And we've spent 25 years complaining about the fact that the internet doesn't have a security layer. And so that's why we have to come up with all these workarounds like, SCA and 3DS and all these other kind of things. But that's not true in the metaverse. The metaverse starts off with the security layer. It starts off with tokens and digital identity. So you don't need that same kind of thing. So is there going to be no fraud? Of course not. Of course there'll be fraud. There's fraud everywhere. If I try to persuade you that I'm a prince that's just won the Spanish lottery, can you send me all of your tokens? Well, of course that's going to go on, Of course. On the other hand, unlike now, at least I'll know who I sent the tokens to because he'll have a European digital identity wallet. So.
For that, we also have solutions like chain analysis, for example, that are integrated into wallet, and they will assess the risk of the counterparty. And in terms of fraud, I think the major risk now for us or for average consumers is that the community actually gives the value of the digital asset, the price. And there is no really regulated sort of if I'm making the game and I'm buying the token and the community defines the price of the token and I'm buying it and I have no control on the price of the token, of course there's governance and all this stuff. But still, this is a very risky, the major losses are within this, let's say, vertical of asset value.
I think for the kind of commerce we're talking about, that when I'm talking about exchanging fungible and non-fungible tokens, I'm only interested in institutionally backed. If you tell me this token is, I don't know, whatever it is, some gold or an Ed Sheeran ticket or a barrel of oil or whatever, if you tell me that, then it's on my own, if I accept that, up to me. But if Citibank says that that's a barrel of oil or that's different. So I'm assuming that the digital assets that we're talking about that are being exchanged are institutionally backed. I'm not interested in things that are just made up by people. So it's a different sort of world. And also, to your point about the managing the wallets and all that, it is, biometrics and all that sort of thing. But for the average person, and I count myself as being an average person, I have no interest in doing that myself. I don't care. I don't want to have to look after the security and put my private key on a USB stick and wrap it up in tin foil and put it in a biscuit tin and bury it under a tree in the back garden. And I want my bank to do that. That's what I want them to do. I will. When I go to the Ed Sheeran concert and I show them my wallet and it's got the NFT in it, it'll be my Barclays wallet or whoever doing it. I mean, nobody wants to do that themselves. That's exactly what banks should be doing in the future. So it is complicated to manage some of that security, but people won't be doing it. People who understand security, e.g. banks, will be doing that for them, I think. So.
Interesting, very interesting perspective. Like the story of crypto is that we avoid banks and we avoid all intermediates and we keep it as decentralized as possible, and there's automatization coming into play.
And how's that all working out at the moment? That's
well, as you see. Yeah.
Sorry, get going.
I can answer that. Of course, we see the shift to this DeFi currently, and I see it personally. So I had like DeFi startup in 2020. Now there's way more interest to what we're doing, and people are starting to understand the value in being fully non-custodial. So yeah, I think we're talking about different players and maybe different goals. All right.
So different players. If we look at the payment industry, the prehistoric payment industry, typically success relies on a central, up-to-scale backend that is able to connect and exchange value across different rails, practically. Now, one of the questions that we got here is around which protocols will win in the metaverse. Is it going to be a multi-protocol environment? Are some are going to be more dominant than others? Is there a success factor, a point of inflation in the evolution currently between few hundreds blockchain protocols out there? And what is your view?
What would you say are the dominant protocols right now?
Well, the one that I liked is Boson protocol. It's kind of new, but they're enabling innovation in the commerce within the metaverse. But of course, if we're talking the protocols, metaverse, first there are lots of metaverses and lots of different protocols with their ideology. So the one, if I knew which one would win, probably I would have had a hedge fund and like just investing into it, not building them. But now I see we're trying to make it as cross-protocol as possible, where assets are easily transferred. In the end, I guess it kind of makes no difference, to be honest. Like it's either crypto or not.
Okay, well, one of the questions here is mentioning dApps. Are dApps have a role? So it says, most likely not the blockchain, but a dApp built on it. So is it going to be a dApp?
Well, now we're up to see the real dApps coming, so I believe that the new bull run will be actually triggered by the dApps. So, like, to be honest, that's all I can answer as of now. Yeah, of course, the new dApps, they will bring this innovation, and then we will see.
But I think there'll be lots of classes of dApps. So for example, you might have a set of dApps which are FCA approved dApps for trading stuff in the UK and complying with the FCA customer rules and all this sort of thing. And then you might have some other dApps which are approved for games. You know what I mean? Like there'll be different groups of these and they'll be certified by different people. Yeah. Like if you just download a random app and run it, that's just the same as downloading random viruses and running them on your PC. I'm not sure people will do that. So. But there'll be lots of different categories of dApps, I think.
And we're going to also the APIs that are available to create the dApp. So eventually, I think, like also again within maybe 2-3 years, everyone in the room would be able to create the dApp quite easily with open.
Well, I won't bother because I'll get ChatGPT to do it for me. But your point's taken.
Fine. So Dave, earlier on during his presentation, came up with a variety of concepts describing to illustrate the architecture and the concept of the metaverse. And 2 key points of intersection between the various elements were around security and privacy. Here on the panel, you are the person that is closer to an actual user case around gaming. What are the challenges around privacy and security within the environment, within the versions of the metaverse you're involved with?
I think that, well, if we talk about digital identity, you know, what I am mostly personally, I think, concerned is about the money laundering. So when you do the money laundering, you would like to hide yourself. I'm sure no one wants to just go out and say, hey, I'm just laundering the money, look at me. It would be probably laundering the money with you know, the identity they would like to use someone else's. So even, you know, we have, for example, the identities in a normal, you know, outside the metaverse. We can still use someone else's identity. We can still use someone else's KYC. We do KYB. We open bank account on someone else's name. So I think we probably could also do it with the metaverse somehow. It's on the blockchain, and I think it could be private blockchain or even public blockchain. Like, for example, we're creating a game called Spooked. I wouldn't call it metaverse because it's a small city we are building with small little penguins, and every users who are logging in or trying to log in, they are trying to become, you know, they are giving an avatar of small little penguins. It's a pirate penguin, or, you know, they look like different, the way they actually look like real life. We convert them to little penguins, and they are, you know, trying to check what's going on within the city. They're trying to mine some things and so forth. But again, it's like if I create a digital identity in one metaverse, we need to have the same identity in the second one. It's possible that maybe for the first 10 years, you can use an identity, one identity in one metaverse, second in second. So you don't have your one unique identity, unless there is some kind of like, you know, connections between all the metaverses that you can just use one. It's like a passport. So if you can accept my passport in a different country, then I can actually go to your country and you know, just stay there or do whatever I want. So it's the same with the metaverse. So I think we should use one identity. And of course, I think in Dave's presentation, it was really good where digital identity is 1/3 part as a security for the users. But all in all, there are so many metaverses. I mean, for me, when I heard metaverse for the first time, I think they will just make one, and that's it. But it looks that someone is making 1, 2, and there's a lot of metaverses around. So regarding identity, I don't know. I think identity is lost somewhere for first few years. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
So we should go to the European Commission and say that the ED passport should contain multiple identities. Talking about regulation, one of the questions that we got here, Stephen, is around the need of a meta regulator, a meta central bank, meta police to protect against stealing assets and other illegal metaverse activities. So which regulators are actually going to get involved in this?
I'm so glad you asked me that question. I've spent a lifetime working with governments, regulators, and policymakers, and it's a nightmare. But the one thing that will inevitably happen in everything we're discussing is that regulation will get involved. I mean, let's just talk about tax. Ugh, evil word, I know. But the regulation on tax and trading and profits and margins and the metaverse has got no borders. So how does that work today on the global VAT and trading rules? This is not easy. Now, you're going to have everybody with half a brain cell wanting to get involved and set up. There will inevitably have to be some kind of global regulation that tries to prevent all of these issues about, you know, falsifying identity. So, you know, the one thing open banking does, as a lot of other bits of tech, it's just one tiny part of trying to prove identity as part of this process. But how many bits of validation do you need to get your wallet? Is it 20, 50, 100? How many points do you need to be absolutely sure you are David Birch and not? I can't believe you actually got done on Instagram. That was brilliant. But you know, so I think there's a lot of rules and regulations that have got to be put in place to give this concept the best chance of being a safe, enjoyable, and fun and profitable place.
I think there's every possibility that policing, just to take the specific case, is actually easier in the metaverse. Because if you think about, I mean, for example, if Claire doesn't like me in the metaverse, right? If I do something inappropriate and she doesn't want to talk to me anymore, like in the office, there's nothing she can do about it really. But in the metaverse, she can just block me, like end of. You know, like remember, the metaverse is a reputation. Remember what I said? It's not about who you are; it's about what you are. You know, it's a reputation economy. If I want to get hired to do something in the metaverse, it's because I can demonstrate the credentials which show I'm able to do, you know, whatever these things are. If those get blocked, that takes away my living. You know, so in many ways, it seems much easier to police that virtual world than to police the real world. You know, people I don't like can come down my street in the real world. I live in Woking, this sort of thing happens. But in my suburbs, come on, that's a great word. Come on, like nobody respond. Like living in the suburbs, right? People you don't like can come down your street. Living in the suburbs, that can't happen because you can just block them. So there's a great many reasons for thinking that actually the policing will be easier in this environment. If you say in the metaverse, nobody under 13 is allowed to come into this room, no one over 65 is allowed to vote in this general election, one of my dreams. No one over 18 can come in here. Like if you say that in the metaverse, it's real. They can't do it. Unless you've got the credential which says you're over 18, signed by somebody I can sue, you're not coming in, end of.
Yeah, but that goes back to exactly Dave's point about the bank, okay? What's the one thing you've got on, everybody's got a phone, and I think everybody's got a mobile bank app on the phone. We trust this. We've got access to our wealth, our cash, our capital, our overdrafts, whatever it is. But we trust this. So actually having that bank as part of that, going back to all of these legitimate parties as part of this rules, regulations, this is what it's all about. It's not just, you know, here's who I am, trust me. It will never be that. It can't be that.
Ronan, now talking about identities and credentials and so on implies having an authority or a system of reference that provides a guarantee that Dave is actually Dave and Stephen is actually Stephen and so on. What type of system are you seeing emerging within the metaverse that are going to fulfill that very, very crucial role without which Dave cannot block the dodgy people coming down his virtual alley? And so who's going to do that?
Yeah, I understand the question, but when it's really needed, when the payment is happening, I think the most critical interaction within the metaverse. So I think AML KYC will come into play here. But in regards to the security of my digital identity and how it could be stolen, yeah, the wallet where I hold this, how I enter the metaverse, if the wallet is really secure with biometrics in place, I think that's the main tool as of now. Okay. To protect my digital identity.
So, is that a biometric, behavioral biometric? Are we talking about a fingerprint?
Yeah, it's like a facial recognition and different type of, if you know, maybe wallets that are popping up right now, especially in Asia, that are actually used in gaming as well. So probably they're coming into traditional industry as well soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the points we were discussing before coming up on stage with Stephen is who's going to make this happen. Dave has taken away Disney. Facebook probably has disappeared together with it down the drain, and few other players are, in question. Who do you think is going to make actually the metaverse happen at scale?
It's going to be down to the big boys with the big bucks. It has to be. If you read the press over the last several years, it is the likes of Facebook. When they changed the name to Meta, that was strategic. No matter what roads they may have gone down that haven't worked yet, they're not going to give up. JP Morgan have invested fortunes. You've got the banks that are investing a fortune in this. There's a lot of very big companies. Stripe, I think Shopify. There's an awful lot of very big, multi-billion value brands that have got the ability to put teams of people on this.
One point, why not Disney? So your view.
It might not be why not Disney. It might be why not Disney now. They might have started a strategy to do something in a certain way, and they've just said, well, actually, no, we have 500 people on that. It's a waste of time. We're going to do it in a more efficient way or use someone else. And frankly, I never believe the press anyhow. So that they're not. There's no way Disney will not be part of the metaverse. It's impossible. If the metaverse stands a chance to exist, Disney will be one of the most visited elements on there because it just attracts hundreds of millions of people. So they won't stop. They haven't stopped. They might have just altered course. And this is, to get the success of the metaverse generally will require many people and lots of time and plenty of iterations. And, you've got to take risks. And some of it has to be calculated and some of it you can afford to do.
I think it depends on the user. Bitcoin, I think no company created Bitcoin. Obviously, everybody's investing. But it came with the ease of transactions when the financial crisis happened in 2008, and the users were like, "Hey, we need something, like we should secure the money." So I think there could be a big metaverse, or maybe I'm not sure who's going to make it, but it will depend on how easy it is for the users. Right now, the metaverse is very complicated. Mm-hmm. You can't get into it when you check it with the virtual devices. It's pretty difficult, but if it's easy for the users, they will do it. It could be anyone. I don't have an answer to that. But of course, I think that in future, it will be something very similar cases like what happened to Bitcoin, Ethereum. Ethereum is on the second one because obviously they have this tokenization. But we have so many cryptocurrencies, but no one can beat Bitcoin because Bitcoin was the first and it actually was good for the users. So I think that will be something like that in the future for Metaverse.
One of the questions is about something connected. If it is about fusing identity, technology, hardware, security, do you think Apple might just be the hidden champion once they get into it, and they are getting to market with the Oculus quite shortly? Is it going to be an Apple game?
Game, I don't know. I mean, look, I can see why there's a lot of focus on games because that's where the immersive 3D worlds are at the moment.
I rephrase it. Is it going to be an Apple business? Is Apple going to be the champion of this?
I honestly don't know. I would think there's different segments. I mean, if you're what's an example I could use? For example, if you're a commodity trader, so if you're commodity traders and you're going to be in a virtual world, which looks very different from Call of Duty or something. If you're commodity traders, your virtual world is going to have like hills which represent the volumes of the different commodities. The sizes of the trees will be the spreads on different commodities. Like, I don't know. And like for us to make a deal, it's going to be like finding a river that flows through the... I can't imagine it. I'm not smart enough to imagine it. But the point is, if we're commodity traders, we're not going to be in Grand Theft Auto. We're going to be in a virtual world that looks very different to that. And it might be visual, it might be audio. If Mr. Musk has his way, it'll be plugged straight into our heads on Mars. So what that's going to look like, I couldn't say. So will Apple be successful? Of course they will, because they know about making consumer electronics, all this sort of thing. But I don't know. I mean, the sweep of history suggests not. The sweep of history suggests someone's going to come along with something that none of us can think of. And just like Twitter came along out of nowhere, I
mean, don't write Microsoft off. You know what they've done with gaming. Gaming is going to be probably one of the highest generations of revenue. We haven't even touched on the concept of microtransactions. In our real world right now, the ability to spend points of a pence on a game to buy a sword or a bubble can't exist unless you're buying a virtual currency. But you could do that with this tokenization. Mm-hmm. And, so it opens up potentially billions of pounds worth of additional trade. So, and games are, I mean, how many people play them?
Games, I mean, if I had to take an absolute wild guess, I would say, and of course none of us want to discuss it in the room because it's not appropriate, but if I had to take an absolute wild guess, I might be very tempted to peek out the corner of my eye at something like OnlyFans. Yeah. Because if you look at the size of those businesses, the amount of money those businesses generate is absolutely colossal. And so they can afford to invest in that kind of technology.
That's the breastiverse. It's a different land.
Different type of...
but it's going to be something like that. It's not going to be the things that we're thinking about, like Fortnite. It's going to be... There's some kids in a basement somewhere that are playing around with this stuff right now, and they'll come out and it's like, all of a sudden, 200 million people will be like, I have to take part in that. Whatever, I can't imagine what it is. Or maybe, I was thinking like maybe Premier League, maybe football.
Yeah, maybe.
Like sporting events are the kind of thing... So recorded things are a bit different, but sporting events are the kind of things you want to go to live.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, would you pay to put the glasses on in order to be in Wembley for the cup final? Actually, I kind of imagine I would pay for that.
Yes, I would.
So
I would.
There are certain categories,
Mindful of time.
So
sorry.
just to add real quick on the previous question as well, I think gonna win the one that makes the tools. Now we see like Nike opening .swash, and we have Roblox already the most popular metaverse. So that's who's gonna win, I think, in the end. The brands that are providing the infrastructure for others to implement their ideas, to project their psychology, their identities, and to create it quite seamlessly.
Okay, so very quickly, I would like to have one question for the whole panel, if we could go through it. And the question is about what is the single building block that is missing for the metaverse to go scale up, and what type of timing are we talking about? If you have any view, please. Single sentence, 2-sentence type of answer, please.
Data. I think from my point, it's data to persuade others to go into metaverse and build their digital experiences. So we don't have enough yet data to show that KPIs has changed.
Thank you.
I think the ease of customers to get into the metaverse, that should be easy. Customer journey should be easy to get into metaverse. That could actually attract users.
Okay.
Convergence has to be people coming together who are at the very top of this food chain that work together, that iron out these problems.
Dave, last word?
You know what I'm going to say? It's identity. The virtual worlds are developing very nicely. You look at Fortnite and all this kind of stuff. There's lots of work going on in virtual worlds. Web3 is developing very nicely. That all kind of works. The missing bit is the identity stuff. So that's where we need progress.
You know what? Knowing you, I could have made a bet.
Predict.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we are run out of time. Please join me in thanking the panel. We could be here speaking for a week and probably not come out with any single well-defined answer. But so far, I guess we had a very good journey across this new universe that is unfolding and developing under our eyes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.